kind of want to have an informal conversation during this session. And some of the students have generated questions that they'd like to ask and get some feedback, but we want to start off with hearing from you. As building administrators, what do you want new teachers coming into your building? What do you want them, skills, things that you want them to be able to do? And what are some things that we on the college level can do to help make that happen? And I'll give you one example that we do here at Georgetown College. All of our teacher candidates, graduates, graduate Google One certified. So that's kind of a requirement. They all go through that class. So when they enter your door, they definitely can help you in the Google world. So just thinking aloud, I'm going to let you guys kind of just share a few minutes. What are some things, expectations that you have for new teachers entering your workplace? Hi, good morning, Eric.
Morning. So I'll just go ahead and start. I'm an assistant principal at a high school up here in Northern Kentucky. What I look for specifically is people that are flexible, that are willing to try and do different things. It's not necessarily like work you into the ground, but to be able to be flexible and to also be able to step away from it. I remember as a first year teacher really struggling with finding a groove to between planning and between grading and everything. So big thing is we look for is flexibility and personality, fit within a team. Are you going to work well with the team? Kind of do whatever it takes mentality is what we look for.
Thank you. Chris, I want your opinion, right?
Well, I was getting ready to jump in there, but so I guess one thing that I've noticed just this year, and of course, I think everybody's in the same situation. We have a lot of new staff this year because of extra positions we were given and all of the other. I guess the one thing that stands out the most to me with new teachers, like brand new first, second year teachers, is kind of this, the expectation piece. And so there's just some things that us old folk have always known to do. So like you check your emails, you reply to emails in a timely manner, you're at your supervision location on time without having to be reminded repeatedly. I know Dr. Tippins one time when I worked for her had to remind me once about coming to work at a certain time even, but she only had to remind me one time. And so kind of that piece where you send those reminders over and over. And in a faculty meeting yesterday, I had to say, guys, we've sent this 3 times. So I hope it's just that you're not reading your email and not it being blatant disrespect, but you got to do this. Like you've got to be at your doors to greet kids at this time. And you've also got to read your emails. And I don't want to, and I said to him, I said, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I don't want to be that principal that has to harp on this, but it really is kind of a thing that we see with brand new people. It's a very different mindset, I think, than what some of the older of us have been used to. And maybe this doesn't make any sense to anybody else, but this just seems among the colleagues I speak with the most in my district, the thing we notice the most about new teachers. And I'll say this though, we've not had the trouble with the willingness to try new things instructionally. Some of they hit the ground running. I don't have any qualms necessarily with the knowledge they bring in or their willingness to take feedback, receive feedback, adjust their instruction based on it. It's just the basic expectation of being somewhere at a certain time and doing certain things that most of us just assume we know to do as professionals.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Hey, good morning, Nellie. I see you there.
Kind of piggybacking off of what Chris just said about expectations as well. I think about in the role that I'm specifically in, and I apologize. I have 2 kids. I'm on COVID leave. So like I'm at home. So I got a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So if you hear a lot of screaming, like it's not perfect, okay. But kind of piggybacking off of Chris, expectations about like classroom behavior procedures, whenever you're going into the class, I know this is kind of maybe a little old, but Harry Wong, first days of school, a lot of people talk about it, but do you really implement that? And, school people that we have seen that have effectively put that in place, just for an example, have been really successful with that. But then also thinking about what our keynote speaker really talked about, just the SEL, how many needs are really starting to escalate right now into schools, and like how are you able to address those needs, and just being really informed. Hold on real quick, I apologize, give me a real quick second. And just how to like identify what needs students are really needing at that moment in time. So for us, kind of like Chris was saying, if a kid comes to us saying that there's been some type of situation that happened at home, there are certain guidelines we have to follow, like protocol that have to happen, and just not trying to be more of a friend rather than being the adult and handling that situation.
Thank you. Kaya, do you want to ask your question? You can unmute.
Hi guys, my name is Kaya, and my question for you is, how would you describe your student culture?
So the question on the table is, how do you describe school culture? You're in your building.
I think people want to answer that question. I think it's really what makes the school go round. It's really how you start. It's really how first time you enter the school, you're going to get a really good pulse of how things are going. So building and fostering those type of relationships on a day-to-day basis is really important. And you can do it in so many different ways, kind of like, again, like our speaker discussed, just building those relationships and just going around and really having conversations with adults as well, just not the kids. Because if you don't take care of the adults, the kids are going to start as well. So, just try to build those relationships. Not only everybody just think it's really just about the kids, but it's really about people in your building as well. So whenever you guys get your teaching job, think about different ways that you can help your team, collaborate with your team, find out like interest, what they're interested in outside of work, outside of, the job. Do they have kids? Do they have specific hobbies? And just really start building relationships with them, because those are people you're going to have to be working with on a day-to-day basis.
And piggyback off what Finn just said, with those relationships, having a shared expectations, not just for teachers, but for kids also. Making sure everybody knows the expectations, because when everybody doesn't, that's when chaos happens. And so when you have clear and high expectations, that really helps school culture too. Knowing, and the clear part is very important, because not only do kids have to know what the expectations are and to be held to a high standard, all the adults in the building have to have those same expectations too.
We have a question and Finn hit upon it just a moment ago. What types of collaboration do you have in your building? What types of opportunity for collaboration?
we have weekly PLCs that are happening on professional learning communities. It's a non-negotiable on those days, which is Wednesday. We can't schedule anything because we value PLCs, the importance of the PLC process and the work that's being done. And then also, I'm real fortunate at the school where I'm currently at, where teachers, it was just kind of, this is what we're going to do. We're going to meet, and teachers meet on their own time. During their own planning, they'll have team meetings outside of the PLCs. They'll meet with each other, before school or after school. We try to get together as a whole school at least once a month to have a meeting as well. Sometimes it's on Mondays, sometimes it's on Wednesdays. I work in Bullitt County, so we have a thing called Bullitt Days, where we try every month, the first Monday of every month, or whenever we come back from breaks, where teachers just get together and then they plan their lessons, and then they can collaborate. They can do vertical alignment with reading, writing. I'm assuming, Ms. Tippins, that this is just not elementary, but also middle and high school as well.
Absolutely.
So it will vary according to what your content is as well. So
Finn, when you talk about PLCs, are you talking about at the high school level, you're talking departments, correct? And then maybe middle and elementary, maybe grade level?
Yeah. So I've actually been fortunate to look at both of them, both at this time. So I've seen PLCs work according to content. I've actually seen them according to in high school as in teams. So you may have an English, a language art, or a science, a social studies, and whatever, another specials area. They may be a team, but it's typically, from my experience, it's based on content.
Mallory? Unmute and ask.
So my question for you all is, how would you describe the student-teacher dynamics in your school? So what are the relationships like between educators and the students?
One thing here at my school that and I had worked in this building before as a translator a few years ago before I became the principal here. One thing we've always taken a lot of pride in is the relationship we have between our staff and our students. And so always emphasizing how much we care about our students, how much we appreciate them, and how much we love them. Matter of fact, when I close the announcements in the afternoon, I always say, here at MSC, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Make sure you tell somebody else before you leave today how much you love them. And so as far as that goes in my building, we're constantly emphasizing that piece of caring about our kids and caring about their families. And I oftentimes have to tell my teachers to shut down because at 7 or 8 p.m., they're still answering messages to parents on Dojo because they feel like that's what fosters that good environment and personality with their families. They want to make sure that they stay in tune with their families so that we are able to give kids the best that we have. One thing my curriculum coach and I've talked about is I think we've got a good handle here on how we love our kids and we provide for our kids. And here at this school, one thing that I love, and this is what I said when I applied to come here that I always loved about this place, is that we here in this building own all processes. We own everybody. We own everything. There's no such thing as my kids and your kids. They're our kids. They're our families and our community. Now, that being said, one thing that my curriculum coach and I've talked about is we feel like we've got a good handle on that. The piece we need to move forward in now is the instruction. I feel like we've focused so much the last few years on making sure we've built that positive culture, and that has paid off. As of this year, we pulled our behavior data with the other schools in the district recently. We have 2 referrals for this school year, and we've been in person the entire year. So to me, that says that obviously we're doing something right here. We've got our PIBA structures in place. We do all of that. The piece we're going to move forward now on is the instructional piece. And what I did say to her is I'm walking this fine line between, I don't want to lose all of that, but we also need to get this sense of urgency with the instruction. And so I'm trying to make sure that we don't lose the one for the other, if that makes any sense.
Certainly does.
I'd like to say that I do agree with everything that Mr. Barnett just said. Also here at Monticello, I teach in elementary school grades 3rd through 5th, and We've had a lot of students come in with social emotional needs. So before school started, we did address expectations, building those relationships with kids. Prior to the first day of school, everybody went through the trauma training. Also had the guidance counselor. She does a check-in, check-out system with some of our students. And just recently, looking at data, I'm in the same boat you're in. We've spent so much time building relationships with kids that instruction's kind of been on a back burner. So our kids have a lot of gaps to fill. But I do believe once they realize we care, they're going to be able to move forward in the classroom. So one of the big pluses this year was the check-in, check-out system. Even as an administrator, I have 5 kids in the morning, and I look at 5 different kids in the afternoon during deer time. We have our enrichment teachers pulling so many students to continue to build those relationships. So every kid is getting some one-on-one attention at some point in time during the week. But it has been a key factor building relationships, I would say, the last 2 to 3 years. But I do agree with everything he said, but it is going to be a challenge trying to move forward to close those achievement gaps. But we're not going to be able to do that until the kids know that we are there, we are pushing them in the right direction. So building relationships is a huge factor in success of a school.
And just to kind of piggyback that, there are some things that we've kind of put in place here expectation wise. I mean, it's easy in COVID world, the last 22 months, whatever it's been, to fall into some negative attitudes or mindsets. And so we've got our anchors, and we're the Wildcats here. So the PAW is our branding, but they're the positive principles, PAWS. And so the first one is have a positive attitude. Then it's act kindly, make wise choices, and be safe. And what I told the staff is those are my non-negotiables for those things, for them. That's not an expectation. That's the non-negotiable for them. And I say to them, you don't have to feel positive to be positive. And so those are the things that we expect each other to do. We do them with each other. We model them for the students. We do them with the kids. And therefore, that's the expectation for them too. And so every morning on the announcements, when I close out and tell them to have a good day, that's the thing that they repeat after me. And so that's the constant that we're always going back to. Are we doing these pieces? And then that is back to taking that then and moving people forward, moving teachers forward instructionally. And again, it's a weird line because you want to make sure that you're pushing your kids without making them struggle too much. Of course, we want productive struggle. So that's kind of where I'm at as a leader, is figuring out how to maintain and keep all the stuff that's so great about here. And even Erin had put a comment. So Erin she taught in this building for years. And so she's familiar with this great culture we have here. It's just that extra piece of moving people that I'm trying to work through.
I just wanted to jump in. Sorry, this is not, I'm a host. I should not be jumping in the mix, but, and I did not have experience as a principal, but just thinking back to my early career as a teacher and just thinking on you all and these thoughtful questions that you have constructed to kind of flip the tables a little bit and get some reflection and get some thoughts for yourself and your own learning. But everything Chris says about MSE, it just happens to be that was where I taught, and that is so true. And there was a question earlier about culture. And I think something that I've reflected on since when I first started teaching is that difference in professional relationships and being friends with your colleagues. And I mean friends. There's no friends like teacher friends. They are your family. But there's also this layer, and Chris brings up the balance, that they are your friends, but then to have a really strong culture, it's this professional struggle too. And it's the ability to push on each other's thinking and really grapple with data and be really honest about your shortcomings and other people's strengths and how you can balance those and work together. So I would just, plant that seed too, that culture with your professional relationships is not just that we're all friends, we all get along, everybody's nice, but that you have all of that, but under that, this love and these solid relationships allows you to strive for the best student outcomes because you all are all in on that. So those are just some reflections of mine from especially my early career in teaching of what it means to be friends versus have a strong, healthy culture.
So another question we have is, what types of technology do you have for both students and staff? And is there any expectation coming in of types of programs or things that we should know about?
So I'll just say, you can't replace a good teacher. The technology, no matter what you do, we could have the newest program. We all could be, Google trainers, but good teaching is good teaching, regardless of what it is. So to answer your question, and that's our philosophy at my school. We would rather have people than to make our classes smaller than have the newest type of technology. So we would rather spend our money effectively building up our teachers to build capacity. But we use like programs. We're really trying to push our way to be Google level 1 at least, certified. Handwriting without tears, reading without tears, different things along. You look at the most up to date stuff. You look at the stuff, guys. People are always trying to sell you stuff, and we try to go the free route. We try to go as much as we can free route. So
Absolutely.
if you can just look at like the top things right now, and if you can just get yourself a little acclimated with it, that'll probably help you out a lot, because different schools are going to have different things that they're looking for, and that's important for y'all to do your research on.
Dr. Tippins, I think the fact that your students are coming out of their Google certified is a huge thing. Our NTI, that's the platform we're using for all of our NTI work right now. And we also use it in the classroom as well. Like our intermediate grades, 3rd through 5th, are departmentalized, and they put the bulk of their stuff in there. So when they're doing small group guided reading, those students, when they're going to stations, are pulling a lot of their work out of the Google Classroom for that room, for that teacher. Most programming that your school would purchase that you're not familiar with, however, there's usually some component of training that goes in with that from the company itself. So I wouldn't get too hung up on not knowing how to use IXL, for example, or any of those others, because somebody will provide that. The Google piece, however, with as much as that's being used, is a huge thing in your all's pocket.
As we wrap up, we have just a couple of minutes left. Give us some advice. What advice would you give us now that we are heading down this path? Thinking back to your college days, I know for me, it'd be thinking several years back, but as we think about those things, what advice would you give us as we get ready to embark and to be your colleagues, hopefully one day soon?
I don't mean to monopolize this, Dr. Tippins. I just have a lot to say. I'd say never stop learning, never stop growing. If you want your kids to move and you want them to learn, you've also got to be willing to do that. And they have to see that you're doing it also. And I'd say just be real with your kids. I mean, obviously at elementary, there's things you wouldn't share. At high school, there's things you shouldn't share. You're not friends with your kids. But for your kids to know that you make mistakes and it's okay to say, I'm sorry. It's okay to show kids the way that you'd expect them to apologize or build that connection. It's okay for you to do that with your kids. Again, knowing that you are the teacher and not their friend. And especially I have noticed that new, fresh out of school people going into a high school, there's not much difference between ages. Just make sure you keep that line drawn clearly. But love your kids. Never stop growing, never stop learning, and don't get bored with what you're doing.
Great advice.
If I could just jump in real quick. My name's Grace Mckenzie. I'm an Associate Director of Family Partnership. I'm with Partners for Education. And I came out of the English as an English education graduate out of the Berea College education program. And I've worked for the last decade in schools, but not as a teacher, and focused on helping folks who are in schools build relationships with families. And it's one of those things that a lot of energy understandably gets put into building relationships with students. But when you engage the family and build that connection, then it increases your ability to do your work, because then they're a partner in the work. And when you engage them as that partner, then that really helps. And I was grateful to hear Mr. Barnett talk about how that's happening at his school. But it's one of those elements that I think it can be really intimidating to make the phone call, to start that conversation. And a lot of it is just about the practice, right? Like, so practicing with a colleague, and when you're, and talking to people who have done it and trying it out. And so just don't be afraid to try it out.
Thank you so much.
I just want to add one last thing. I would encourage you guys, the first week of school, make a positive phone call home to each student. That may be the first positive phone call that child has experienced. I remember doing that for the first time as a teacher. It took a lot of my first week of planning, but the investment that was made from that paid dividends later on. And, you know, sometimes, guys, you're going to find out some things about kids just having a conversation with the parent. You know, well, this person, you know, little Johnny is struggling with this or whatever, guys. If you do that, I promise it's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier. And some kids, their struggles, you know, you have that kid for 3 days who just refuses not to do anything, but they brought a pencil to class. Hey, I'm real happy that your child came prepared for class. I just want you to know that. Like, some things you got to pull straws at, but I'd encourage you all to do that as well.
Thank you all so much. We so appreciate you taking a few minutes today and dropping in and sharing your experiences and your words of wisdom with us. So at this time, Erin, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Again, thank you so much for allowing us to just drop in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tippins, and thank you to all of your students, our wonderful future colleagues who have joined us today. I'm just going to reiterate, shameless plug in the chat. Grab that bit.ly link, and we would love to hear from all of you that are future teachers that will be joining us, and also principals. If you have new teachers, we have our New Teacher Tuesday that we need some refreshing on too. So if you've got new teachers, we'd love to spotlight them too. Retired teachers, veteran teachers, y'all, everybody is welcome to do a spotlight. But thank you for joining us today and for all of your questions and your responses, thoughtful discussion, great stuff. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day at EdCamp.